If you've played any bit of MLB The Show 21, you know that one of the best pitchers in the game is this 94 future stars Edward Cabrera. And the big reason he's so good is because of that sinker. It has outliers, so it's very fast, but it's just a very effective sinker. A lot of people struggle to hit it. And one thing you were able to do, at least I felt like, with Edward Cabrera before, is throw sinkers high. You were able to throw them in the upper part of the zone, and you would have that big downward movement like you would with any sinker. Basically the same exact movement, but just higher in the zone. And a key thing, if you guys know baseball, is that high sinkers in real baseball, they aren't really effective. It's tough to get that same downward movement when you throw that pitch high. Point of a sinker is to make it look like a four-seam fastball or something of like that sort, where it's just a flat, straight pitch, and at some point during the motion, it just goes down. And when you throw it high, you can't really get that same type of movement in real life. So recently, we got a patch in MLB The Show saying that there's a higher loss of break for aiming a sinker, changeup, or curveball high in the zone, which is a real thing in baseball. If you throw a lot of breaking balls high, they don't have that same downward movement, because you think about where you're releasing the ball, you're releasing it at a higher level, so it doesn't have that same break as if you were to aim lower. So today we're gonna go through, we're gonna do some testing, see how much movement these high sinkers have now, see if it's really worth throwing this pitch anymore, or if there's really a big difference in many of the sinker ball pitchers like Edward Cabrera. Let's get into it. What's going on, YouTube? I appreciate you guys watching this video. In case you have not hit that sub button, make sure you do. We're offering a ton of tips and tricks on the channel to help you all get better at MLB The Show 21. So if you are brand new, make sure you hit that sub button. Keep up with the rest of us. If you do want to keep up with me in the content, I do stream on Twitch. Feel free to swing by my Twitch channels, twitch.tv/scan, and come hang out with us. Ask me any questions you have on the game, and I'll gladly answer them. And finally, if you do learn something new from this video, make sure you hit a thumbs up on it. We'll set a like goal of 100 for this video. We'll give it a go, see if you guys can reach it, but I got a good feeling you guys can. But without further ado, let's go into our breakdown, and let's go through our sinkers and see how effective they actually are. So I added up a lot of gameplay here in Premiere Pro, so we're going to be using this as like a resource so we could see. I'm testing multiple pitchers, and we're going to really see if we can pick up on the difference. Apparently, according to the great world of Twitter and the following that follows me on Twitter, most people actually don't notice the change, which is an interesting thing. Either it's just something that isn't that noticeable in game, maybe it's something that needed more patching and it actually didn't affect anything, or overall maybe it's just something that people aren't going to often, so you just don't notice it, or there may be other factors in play. The update does say it's based on the starting point of the pitch, but we're gonna test that, and we're gonna really see if there is a difference. So we're gonna look into a couple factors: the release point, the location of the pitch, and the break on the sinker of that pitcher. As you know, every pitcher has different ratings, overalls for their sinkers. Some of them have 99 break, like 99 Felix Hernandez here. Some people have about 90, like Edward Cabrera. And some people like James Paxton have definitely lower break with like 70. Also, the release point is key. You gotta be looking at the level of they're releasing the ball and see if it actually is a difference. And also we gotta actually look at the part of the zone. Obviously we can aim high in the zone, but strike zones kind of change height depending on the hitter who is up. So those are all kind of factors we gotta look into here and really see how much break it has. So we're gonna look at Felix. We're gonna throw the sinker high into the left, and we're gonna try to see if we can pick up on it being a sinker and notice that downward movement it has and see if it actually is strong. So here's a high sinker up and in. You'll see it definitely has a downward movement. It's something that you can definitely pick up. Here it is in slow motion. It goes up, is above the zone, and then ploop, kind of plops down to the top part of the zone. Is it really that good of a pitch though? Like, does this really have that much break? Like, it doesn't look like a bad pitch, but it's right near that top of the zone that I think many people would swing at it. If it was an aggressive hitter who likes to swing at those high fastballs, that pitch coming back would change it from being a four seam that stays above the zone and can maybe turn to a fly out into a sinker that looks like it's a fastball going above the zone and then breaks back down, and then they squared up because they were sitting dead right on the high fastball. Just for a reference as well, Here is a comparison to a lower sinker so you could see the difference in movement. You see, look at his release point and look at it moving down. There is definitely a more significant downward movement. Here it is side by side. I like to look at this in slow-mo and just look at the ball out of the hand. So the ball is out of the hand right here for both of them. You see the one on the right is the high sinker. It's going a little bit higher. Just for reference, you see that little black line there? It's above it. This one, it's right in it. So obviously the ball is released a little differently. But as you look at the pitch on its path, you see that this one just keeps going up on the right. This one starts to work its way down on the left. And then right about halfway through, you kind of see it really dramatically go down. Like this is kind of looking like a fastball near the middle part of the plate here on the left side. And then shoop, it just snaps down. And on the right side, it's a fastball. It looks like a fastball going up. Looks like it would be going about here. And then it breaks down, ends up right here. But you look at the two, you could really notice this more significant break on the left one because it is lower in the zone and that makes the sinker more effective. So you could see that yes, there is definitely less break with the sinker high on top of the zone in comparison to lower. And these pitches are basically in line. They're basically on the same part, the left side of the zone. But you can kind of see the movement a little bit more dramatically here. Just look at it move to the left. You really see it on the left one more so, in my opinion. You could tell that it is a sinker still on the higher one above the zone. Here is a changeup just for reference as well. Felix does have a good changeup, so I thought we would throw one high. And honestly, it looks nearly identical to the sinker. It just, the ball is very floaty, as changeups are. Doesn't really have that snap downward. It kind of floats downward. And that's probably a very hittable pitch for Felix, especially since it's about the same speed of his fastball. Now let's look at Nolan Ryan. He has a different release point. That's one key thing to look at. It's definitely different than, say, Felix Hernandez is. And also, we're going to want to look at the movement of the sinker. He does have less break. I think it's about 80 break if I remember correctly. So that's going to be a key. That break, the release point, and where it is in the zone. We'll take a look at it in full speed. It honestly looks a lot like the changeup that Felix threw. Here it is in slow motion. Not much downward snapping movement. It just looks like a high fastball that just stays high. You see that? It just kind of keeps going up bit by bit. There's maybe a point right here where it goes a little downward, but that's not enough break on it to really dot it back in the zone. So that's a key thing with Nolan Ryan. And let me take a look at their release points side by side just for comparison. So here is where they're releasing the ball. We'll go to the last point. The ball is in the hand. You see Nolan Ryan is lower and to the left. He's like halfway in line with the bush thing to the left. Felix Hernandez on our right side here is right in that little dark blue box. So he is releasing the ball a little bit higher. You see the height difference is about this between the two. And you look at where the pitch is going. Let's look at the height they're thrown. Nolan Ryan's is very similar. But his kind of looks like it comes down a little bit. Just a little smidgen. But it doesn't really seem like as much movement as Felix's. You see? Look at the left entirely right now. It looks very floaty. Doesn't have that snappiness like Felix is. Now look on the right. It's going up and then boop, down. And that movement is definitely more on the right side than the left, despite them being at the same height, basically. And you see where they finish. Nolan Ryan's is actually finishes lower, but it just doesn't have that same loopiness. It's kind of floaty. So I think that since he's releasing the ball lower, I know the break is also a factor. That's probably a difference too. But you also have to remember, since he is releasing the ball lower, that ball is going higher from where his hand is. So that difference is probably more also because of the lower release point. Like if you were to take a submariner, throw it low, and then they have the lower release point and you throw that pitch in the same spot, it probably doesn't look like it's moving down at all. It probably just looks like a fastball moving up because of how low the release point actually is. So that's definitely a key. But yeah, that's Nolan Ryan. Let's just take a look at Edward Cabrera and see if we notice anything similar as well. There we go. So there is Edward Cabrera's sinker, and you see it has 90 break. It's kind of an in-between of Nolan Ryan's and Felix's. But again, taking a look at his release point, it is not as high as Felix Hernandez's. It's definitely a little lower, but his arm is extended outward, 3/4 angle going. So that ball is kind of at the same height as Nolan Ryan's, just a little higher. It's like an in-between of Felix. It's as outward as Nolan Ryan's basically, but not as high as Felix Hernandez is. And seeing this pitch, he's throwing it basically at the same level. He's throwing it at his chest, and it looks like it's going up, and it kind of floats back down. It looks a lot like Nolan Ryan's sinker, a lot like it, even though the release is nearly as high as Felix Hernandez is. Here we go again, one more time. And again, Edward Cabrera has like 90 break on his sinker. So this is like an in-between of break of Felix and Nolan Ryan, but it looks a lot similar to Nolan Ryan's, I feel like, because of the release point. All right, so here is Edward in comparison to Nolan Ryan. You see they're nearly just as out. He's actually further left than Nolan Ryan, but just a little smidgen higher. And you see where the ball is coming out of the hand? Nearly the same spot, except Edwards is a little higher. You see? It's going up. So ignore the strike zone lines. Just look at the pitch in comparison to the batter's eye behind. It's easy. I was just getting confused with the line. It feels like Nolan Ryan's is higher because of the lines of the strike zone, but just look at it in comparison to the batter's eye, because that's in the same spot. There are two different strike zones we're looking at here. They're both going up. They honestly look very identical. The motion of the ball looks really identical. Like, the sinker movement is very subtle. Like, looking at it in full speed, right around here, you see it go down. And it's the same for both of them, except Edwards is faster. So there definitely is less movement. So just to get the point across, here's Edwards' sinker lower in the zone. You see it does have solid movement still. Looking at it in the slowest of slow-mos, it looks like it's going to be a fastball ending up here off the rip. And then shoop, right here, it's starting to snap left. And then ends up further down to the left instead of that fastball right around here. So his sinker is definitely good still. Definitely good in the lower part of the zone. But you see on the high part of the zone, it's very floaty and it doesn't really do too much. Now let's look at James Paxton, which before we even get into the pitch, I want to point out a couple things. First, look at his release point. He is above the green bush. We were talking about it before, that Felix Hernandez is right in that little dark blue box that's right around here. And James Paxton here is very similar to Felix's release. It's actually a little higher, I think. You see, it's above that dark blue box. It's not the biggest difference, but the height is about like this from looking at the plate. And looking at it in full speed, just look at the motion of it. You see that? To me, it seems like this one actually did the most. It looks like it actually had the most movement. Just look at it out of the hand. Look at how high the maximum height of it is. It's like near the top part of this batter's eye, and then it comes back down. So what I did here, I know this is probably really trippy, but I took Nolan Ryan, I flipped his motion so we can compare him and Paxton side by side. I know it definitely looks a little trippy, but looking at them side by side here, you see how much lower Nolan Ryan's release point is to Paxton's. There's a significant height difference here. Then watching the ball come in, you see how much higher the pitch is out of the hand? You see Paxton's doesn't look like it moves up from a lower point like Nolan Ryan. It actually looks like it's staying up for a bit since that release point is higher. It's going up just like Nolan Ryan's is, but it starts to come back down again right at the same point. But the path to the zone is key. They're both going to end up on nearly identical heights. You see that. But honestly, if you're looking at it, the ball is 100% higher on Paxton here, and it comes back down more. And it ends up actually lower than Nolan Ryan's. And I think this comparison is the most intriguing. I think that this shows that that release point for the pitcher is massive. Paxton, who is throwing very high, you see, let's look at his body in comparison to Nolan's. Nolan's bending down, his arm slot is lower. Paxton got the arm extended and he's throwing it higher from a higher release point. It seems like that pitch has more break because he's not throwing it as high. You may be able to throw this sinker better with James Paxton high in the zone because he's got the higher release point. It's not like the same thing where every pitcher who throws the ball at this point will have less break. That emphasis in the patch notes where they say is really dependent on the pitcher's hand release, I think is really key. And just for our final points, and just for a reference so you don't think I'm crazy, this is his comparison to the fastball. So take one last look at this. You see that sinker? This is what his fastball looks like. So it definitely has more break than the fastball. Like, you're seeing this, right? This fastball is very level. I know this is Trey Mancini's got a higher strike zone, but if you're looking at it, the pitch nearly ends up in the same spot. There is more break on that sinker. Is it much? Not really. But you see that there definitely is more of a break on the sinker. The sinker starts going up. You see its height. It reaches the very top of the batter's eye and then goes down. All right, so I actually did find a clip from old gameplay just to get this final point across. Is it really a big difference from the previous gameplay? Was it a big difference before the update in comparison to now? I found one pitch I want to look at. This is Edward Cabrera. He's got 37 pitches. This is the second inning of a game. I was getting my butt kicked in. And as you see, I don't know if you can see the small text. This is from the 4th, August 4th. Our update was on the 9th, so 5 days before. So in full speed, this is what it looks like. That up and away sinker, kind of like what we were throwing in a lot of this video. Slow motion. Just, I want to look at it in comparison to the release point. So here's the ball when it comes out of the hand. It's going up. And then really early on, it snaps back down to the left. You see how left that went? It's right around there, it just dipped left. That's an up and away Edward Cabrera sinker. And we've been looking at that for a bit here. Look at the difference in the height. You see how floaty this is? There's a very floaty sinker here. That's not floaty. You see how much downward movement that has? Look, it's like a So listen, you can make whatever opinion you want, but I definitely do think that this is a difference, and it did make a difference in the update. I guess, in my opinion, if I were to guess why people didn't notice it, either one, you're not seeing high sinkers thrown, or B, people aren't throwing them over the heart of the plate. People are probably throwing them at a certain height or below, kind of like I am. Like, I'm usually aiming at the belt, like no higher than here usually for me, I would like to say. A lot of times I throw it out of zone like here. I don't throw it in the zone anyway, so you can notice some movement still. But if you were to ask me, I think there is a difference. And if you are someone who does for some reason throw those over the plate, I really don't think you can pull them off as effectively as you used to. So if you're gonna really use this high sinker, probably want to only keep it to the high break pitchers or pitchers who have that higher release point. Not throw it too often, because good hitters will crush it, and it's definitely not as effective. But that is it. That was our investigation of the high sinkers, the high changeups. I don't want to focus too much on the curveballs and the changeups, because many people aren't throwing them anyway, and I bet you there is a difference, just like with the sinkers. I wanted to talk about sinkers more because sinkers have a lot of movement, and they're a really big part of MLB The Show. And honestly, this is really crucial. Like, is Edward Cabrera is usable? He probably is if you're someone who didn't go to that pitch beforehand a lot. But if you're someone that really relied on a high sinker, you may want to consider using someone else who has, say, a cutter or just a better pitch mix to throw those higher fastballs. Also, that release point is definitely key. The higher the release point, you may be able to get away with them more than someone who's throwing lower and not as high. And it seems with someone even as not sidearm like Edward Cabrera or Nolan Ryan, that this could affect them more so than someone who's like James Paxton, who throws over his body more. I hope you enjoyed. I hope my explanations were clear enough. Hopefully you got every point I was trying to get across. And again, this is just my theory. We obviously try to put as much visual evidence and testing in it as possible. At the end of the day, we wouldn't really know unless I was able to test it perfectly side by side in comparison to a previous update. And do you agree with me? Let me know in the comments section. Let me know if you've been using these guys like Edward Cabrera, throwing those high sinkers. Have they been working out for you? I'd love to hear your feedback on that. But without keeping you any longer, you all have a great rest of your day. I'll see you all again in the next one. Deuces.